Hello, hello. Welcome to the Worthy Writers Podcast. I'm your host, Kirsten McNeill, a Canadian self-published author and full-service editor for fellow writers. On this podcast, you'll get a look into my personal writing journey and find encouragement to enjoy your own. If you had a good time with me, I would appreciate if you could like, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. All right, worthy writers, let's jump in. Episode number 7, Writing Strength from Within. On this episode, I'll talk about my experiences writing my first novel, taking you all the way through to the end product of publication, and a bit about college. Of course, I will end with quotes and a positive note to inspire you. Strength from Within is a collection of 15 short stories revolving around mental health, relationships, and other social issues. The first story I wrote for it was actually meant to be its own novel. I titled it Behind Closed Doors. It's about a girl who's suffering in silence until she meets a boy who changes her perspective on the world, allowing her to reconnect with her parents. I started writing it in grade 12, without an outline, unfortunately. I had a spare block, and during that period, a friend of mine had a photography class in one of the computer labs. Her teacher so kindly allowed me to work there. I kept a flash drive with my novel on it and took it with me every day to school. Funny thing about spare blocks, when I went in to see the counselor to request it in my schedule, I called it a spare. The counselor glared at me and said, "It's called a study block?" Sure, I could have used it to study, but I mostly just wrote my book or read at the table outside the library where the other study block kids hung out. I wanted Behind Closed Doors to be my first novel, which ended up at a word count of 20,000. I thought it was a full novel because I was basing it off a page count, but I can't remember what that total was. At the time, I didn't know much about proper word counts or even what novellas were. It didn't really hit me how little the length was until I let a few friends read it and they mentioned how quick it was. The problem is this was the full story. It was all I had to say about it. Sure, I could have padded it with more scenes or other characters, but that didn't feel right to me. This story was done. So what did I decide? To create a short story collection. The theme, of course, was inspiring strength in the darkest times. From the help of old short story ideas I had tucked away, I created a bunch of separate documents with a general description of what each short story would be about. Originally, I had 20 story ideas. Then I realized how long the book would be if I included them all, and stuck to the 15 that are currently in it. Writing this book as Strength from Within, and not the novel Behind Closed Doors, didn't officially start until I started my first year of college. Granted, that was only a couple months after I graduated high school, but still. I went for the creative writing program and came out with an Associate of Arts degree in sociology 3 years later. I took breaks in between semesters. School wasn't really for me with all the essays and exams, but I wanted to see it through and feel accomplished, so that's why I finished. I already had tons of sociology credits, so it was an easy decision to switch over my major. So why did I write my debut novel as a short story collection? Because I loved short stories, and I had so many ideas that were complete that way. Side note, I have to say that there's this stigma around short stories and novellas not being real novels. Remember my episode about quote-unquote real writers? Same idea applies here. All types of writers and all types of books and reading material are valid. Creativity is not limited to one platform. There are so many ways you can present your stories to readers. I just happen to believe short stories was the best way for me to make my first splash in the publishing industry. The stories in my novel are powerful to me. They share my views on societal issues and work to start a conversation. I'm not a doctor or an expert on the topics. I just like helping people and inspiring others using my personal experiences and fictional worlds. That's not news if you've been following my work for a while. It's funny how my books and a lot of projects I've worked on reflected themes of confidence, positivity, and empowerment before I even knew what my true branding was. At some point through the writing process, I knew that I was done. I had enough stories for a complete novel. I was so new to the writing community, especially on Instagram, and didn't have nearly as many friends as I do now. The writing process for me was lonely. I was determined, though. I was on a mission to share my stories. I knew the purpose of each one and in exactly which order they would appear in the book. All the decisions were made by me. I liked that control, that power. After I was done the first draft, I took it to beta readers. I simultaneously regret and don't regret not taking the book to professional editors. I was a young college kid and super new to the book industry. Despite having sent out a manuscript in 10th grade, I just didn't have the experience that I do now. And that's okay, that's how it should be. No one starts at level 100 unless you're cheating. I wrote a list of questions about characters and plot and gave the book to my family and a few friends. Some were volunteers I'd connected with on the internet as well. What I found about the beta feedback, which was super helpful in some areas and not so much in others, was that it was very general. A lot of the comments were, yeah, everything looks good, but maybe tweak XYZ a little. One person didn't even realize it was a short story collection and got confused. Another person didn't understand a Canadian term and suggested I Americanize it. What I expected from these beta readers was deep insight, amazing constructive criticism that would elevate each story to perfection, and a few nice comments thrown in there. I didn't get exactly what I wanted. I'm not saying that my beta readers weren't amazing. They were. I absolutely appreciate that they took the time to read my rough work and offer the comments they did. They gave me the encouragement I needed to keep going. But what I expected of them isn't what beta readers are for. To be honest, I didn't really express all that well what I wanted as I was too afraid of asking too much. Beta readers provide you feedback on the reading experience, how they felt, the character arcs, compliments, and maybe suggested fixes. They're not required to send over detailed reports outlining the play-by-play of their experience on each page. No one has time for that as a volunteer. I mean, maybe some beta readers do, but that's a lot to expect from someone if they're not getting paid. Hence why it's so important to hire professional editors. They take the effort to zero in on each molecule of your manuscript, ripping it apart so that you can work together, stitching it back in a better way. They're a paid part of the team, so you would think they would want to put in their best efforts to help you. That's my opinion on how to be a good editor anyways. Open communication, detailed comments and suggested ways to fix errors, knowledgeable conversations, and kindness as you deliver the message. I didn't find any editors, but I should have. I can't change that now though, but I'm using all my knowledge to do better in the future. What I did spend money on was a formatter. I did not have the time or patience to figure out how to do that on my own. I didn't go crazy with it, just simple enough so the files would be accepted on Amazon. I have no idea when I learned about Kindle Direct Publishing. I may have started Googling free or cheap ways to publish. Not sure if anyone told me about it or if I discovered it on my own. Either way, I found out about it, and it seemed like the best and least expensive way for me to share my book. At the time, I had the mentality that if I didn't publish my book now, I'd never get the courage to do it again. I'd keep tinkering, keep perfecting, but that wasn't going to be productive. So I chose the month of July and asked a friend to pick a number between 1 and 31. They picked 29, so that was my release date. It kept me accountable to my goals and gave me something tangible to hold on to. I was going to be a published author whether I was ready or not. Another thing I wish I had paid for was a cover designer. Don't get me wrong, I love what I did for my original cover. My friend Nicole loves photography, so we went out to this beautiful park and took tons of photos by the fountain and trees. I didn't include any with my face because I don't usually like that for book covers. I really appreciated her help taking those photos. The problem is that I don't think the cover I chose really matched for a fiction novel. The photos are beautiful, but it didn't create the attention that I wanted for my book. I changed my cover twice after that. Once to a purple background with tree silhouettes. The cover designer did very basic work, and at the same time, I didn't really know what I wanted. It was also cheaper than the cover designer I used for the current image with a light blue background and yellow leaf. That designer took more time to understand the book and talk to me about what I wanted. I'm much happier with the cover now. That just goes to show you that you get what you pay for. Editing and cover design are such crucial investments in the book building process. I was so excited when the launch day came. I did a live to talk about the book, had tons of support from friends and family, some fellow authors, though, like I said, I didn't have the connections in the community that I do now. I was so proud of myself. I published a book. Me! All by myself. I wrote a book and chose the best way for me to share with the world. My family even got me a present to celebrate my accomplishment. They had the image of my book cover and my original bookmark framed. I have it hanging in my room as a reminder of the journey I've taken. I learned a lot from the experience of writing my book. Patience, accountability, how to publish, the importance of a bookish community, the importance of marketing. Ugh, I hate marketing. Anyone else? You really need to have a plan and people helping you to make launch day a success. Otherwise, how are people going to hear about it? It's also a never-ending journey, so try not to stress too much about perfecting marketing strategies. Just do your best and never stop talking about it. Also, never fear asking for help. People respond well when you directly ask them a question, in a kind way, of course. The worst they're going to say is no, or they don't have time to commit to what you're asking. It's okay if they say no. You don't want to pressure someone into helping you or work with someone who can't give their full attention. That advice applies to many aspects of life. Ask for help, accept a no, do the best you can, and know that everything is going to be okay. I have plans to create a new edition of this book to better reflect all the knowledge I've gained and having editors look at it as well. Currently, there are signed paperback copies of the most recent edition for sale on my website. So if you're looking for a short story collection full of emotion, complicated relationships, and personal growth, take time to check it out before I'm out of copies. Going back to my college experience for a bit, I want to mention 3 classes I took and the pros and cons of each. One of them was an English literature type class, can't remember the exact name of it. We discussed a few classic works throughout the semester, one of which being Pride and Prejudice. I'm all for studying great works of literature, but do we have to keep studying the same classics over and over again? Can't more modern books show us the same life lessons or important writing styles? I know Jane Austen is cool and all, but why do entry-level English classes all have to be the same? I did make some great friends in that class though, but unfortunately I don't have much contact with them anymore. Couldn't have gone through that class without them though. Another class I took was a creative writing workshop. There was a great group of people, a small group, and I learned more about my authentic voice. Though I still craved that validation. I wanted to be chosen to be included in the school's short story collection they put out every quarter. Tried to style my writing after the more skilled students in the class. Told everyone my favorite book was Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck to seem smarter. I do like the book, but in that moment I hadn't even read it yet. We also had to give feedback on other people's stories just minutes after the author had read it to the class. I'm the type that likes to think my thoughts through, and we didn't have much time to sit with it before we were required to speak. There was also a time when we split up into smaller groups and we had to speak to get graded. Yet the only times I was able to get a word in with an intelligent comment were the times the professor was checking in on the other group. Basically, that whole class, I tried to be something I wasn't, and I just didn't fit in with anyone. The other creative writing class, which I liked more, was for writing nonfiction. It was fun to be tested on my creative nonfiction skills, as it was something I'd never done before. We actually got time to read the stories of the other students on our own time before we discussed it in the class. Much more my speed. Aside from the weekly journals we had to write, the main assignment was to write 1 short story and 1 poem. I wrote the story about my dad and the poem as an ode to the band The Eagles and included their song titles to create the imagery. Again, I was craving validation for pieces that were still in the rough draft stages. I didn't get the endless praise that I wanted, but that didn't stop me from writing. To end off this episode, I'd like to share a few excerpts from my book, Strength from Within. This one is from Behind Closed Doors. No one knows how long their pain would go on for, or what my absence would do to them. My thoughts came to the image of Sparky. He had a mission, to save people. If I gave up now, what would that say? I love this quote because it reflects the main character's journey throughout the story and her strength. This quote from Keep Me Safe says, "If I leave with you, will you protect me? No, but I'll teach you to protect yourself." When I had beta readers look at my book, I got a comment about how nice this exchange was between the brother and sister. Teaching people to be their own saviors can help show them to be independent while also letting them know they have someone on their side. Happiness. We've all been happy at one point, right? There's so many versions of that word. We can describe one emotion 1,000,000 times over. You scored that winning goal? Overjoyed. You finished your first work of art? Elated. You're reunited with your best friend? Thrilled. There's too many words for one simple emotion. But what do I feel? These are the first lines from Get Over It, which is kind of a futuristic environment that doesn't understand what depression is. The story follows Mara as she explores her emotions and the punishment she experiences. For today, your challenge is this. Think about the biggest lesson you've learned throughout your life. It doesn't even have to relate to writing. Anything you've learned that feels important to you. When you've got it, write it down. Then also share it with someone. One person who you think needs to hear it. Pass on your wisdom. Allow others to learn from your experiences. In next week's episode, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the final myth of this season, worthy ideas are special and unique. For the following week, I'll have my first guest joining me, YA fantasy and romance author Stephanie B. Whitfield. The final episode of this season will be an interview with self-editing coach and podcaster Elzvira Elbada Yelgershma. If you're following me on Buy Me a Coffee, get ready for tons of fun discussions, graphics, and exclusives for Worthy Writers Club subscribers. Thank you for listening. Happy writing, Worthy Writers! Thank you for listening to the Worthy Writers Podcast. Did you enjoy this episode? Share your love and support by checking out my Buy Me a Coffee profile for bonus content and to help me continue building my creative empire. If you'd like other ways to connect, follow me on Instagram, join my Facebook group, or explore my website to learn more about me, be part of my community, or suggest topics for future episodes. All links are in the show notes. I can't wait to connect with you. My final words before you go, never forget that you are worthy.